My parents forced me to marry a poor nobody, Mom said. It's where you belong. What they didn't know, he was a secret billionaire. And when I took the mic, 4 black SUVs pulled up. Hey Reddit, my name is Vanessa. And I grew up in a house where appearances were everything. My mother Lorraine ran our household like a CEO on steroids. And my father Gregory followed suit, treating life like a business merger. We lived in a 3-story colonial house in Westchester, New York, the kind with manicured hedges, a marble foyer, and walls lined with paintings we weren't allowed to touch. I attended private schools, wore pre-approved designer clothing, and had my friends vetted like job applicants. I never really fit in, though. I was too soft for my mother's ironclad standards, and too questioning for my father's passive compliance. My sister Felicia was the golden child, always saying and doing the right thing. I was the rebel, not with drugs or parties, but with ideas. I wanted to write, travel, fall in love without a prenup looming over my head like a thundercloud. That dream got crushed the day my parents announced I was getting married. It was during one of those Sunday family brunches, the ones where everything looked perfect, but felt cold as hell. My mother cut into her avocado toast and said casually, "We've found someone for you." I choked on my mimosa. "Excuse me." "A husband," she clarified, as if I were deaf. "His name is Jordan, he comes from modest beginnings, but he's obedient. Quiet, not the flashy, useless type you usually flirt with." I stared at her like she'd grown another head. "You want me to marry someone poor?" My father cleared his throat, trying to soften the blow. "He's respectable. His family owns a small landscaping business upstate. Solid work ethic." I blinked. "You're marrying me off to the gardener." That earned me a glare from my mother. "Don't be classist, it's where you belong." That line, that's the one that buried itself into my chest and throbbed for weeks. Apparently, they thought I'd wasted my potential. I'd graduated college with a degree in English, turned down law school, and was working part-time at a local bookstore. To them, I was a disappointment. Aimless and romantic, unfit to steer the Delacroix legacy forward. So they arranged a union with someone they thought would keep me grounded, contained. What they didn't expect was for me to say yes. But I did, not because I was weak, but because I was curious. And because Jordan was confusing when we first met. He showed up in jeans and a black Henley, his eyes dark and unreadable, his handshake firm. He had this calm energy about him, like someone who'd already lived through enough storms to know when to keep still. "I know this isn't your idea," he said bluntly after we were introduced. "It's not mine either, but if we're stuck with this, let's try not to kill each other." I laughed. "He didn't." "You're serious?" I asked. He nodded once, dead serious. "And I don't do drama, you'll find that out." And he was right. Jordan moved into the guest house behind my parents' estate while we planned the wedding. He worked odd hours, always on the phone, always slipping away in the middle of the night claiming work stuff. My parents didn't ask questions, they were just glad he wasn't after their money. But I was curious every time I tried to get close. He stayed distant, polite but guarded. Until one night, I found him in the guest house with blueprints spread across the table, and 2 phones going off with encrypted messages. "Who are you really?" I asked. Arms crossed, he looked up slowly. "Someone you'll find out about soon," instead of answering directly. He handed me a pen. "Help me mark these structures." I stared at the documents. They weren't landscaping plans, they were architectural designs for high-tech buildings, with security systems that looked straight out of a spy movie. "I thought you dug ditches and planted tulips." I muttered. He smirked for the first time. "That's what they want to think." It started to unravel from there. Over the next few weeks, I began noticing the luxury watches he wore. Brands you don't buy on a landscaper's salary. His laptop had fingerprint security. His car had bulletproof windows. And one time, when we got followed on the way to dinner, he took a sharp right into a gated warehouse. Keyed in a code, and parked like it was routine. "Still think I'm the gardener?" he asked, leaning back in his seat. I stared at him. "You're hiding something." "Everyone's hiding something, Vanessa. Yours is that you hate this life." And he wasn't wrong. The wedding day came faster than I expected. It was held at my parents' estate. Of course, in the grand ballroom that looked like something out of a royal movie. My mother was glowing, not because she was happy, but because she believed she had won. She thought she had finally tamed me, humiliated me, and married me off beneath my station. What she didn't know was that I had a plan too. During the ceremony, I smiled. I played the part of the dutiful daughter, the reluctantly obedient bride. I let them bask in their own arrogance. Until the reception. That's when I walked up to the mic. I'd told Jordan, in advance, that I was going to make a speech. He nodded, that same calm look on his face. And said, "Say what you need to say." "I've got you," so I stood there. In front of hundreds of smug guests. Champagne flutes in hand, and I said, "I'd like to thank my parents for arranging this marriage. Truly, it taught me that love isn't something you buy or control, it's something you earn." And in trying to punish me, by marrying me off to someone they considered beneath me, I looked straight at my mother. They didn't realize they handed me the best gift I could ever ask for. My mother's smile began to falter. Because what they didn't know. I continued, my voice steady. "Is that Jordan isn't just a good man? He's brilliant, loyal, and successful in ways this room can't even comprehend." That's when the sound of engines echoed from outside. And 4 black SUVs pulled up. The entire ballroom turned. My father dropped his glass. My mother's jaw clenched. Jordan walked up beside me, took the mic, and said, "I didn't come here today to prove anything. But since you all care so much about money." The doors opened. And men in suits stepped inside. Followed by a tall man, who whispered something into Jordan's ear. "Let me introduce myself properly." Jordan said, "I'm not a landscaper. I own a multinational security firm. And this marriage, it wasn't about submission. It was about giving Vanessa the life she actually deserves." Gasps, I looked around the room. At the faces who had pitted me just hours ago. And now couldn't look me in the eye. And I smiled. Because this was just the beginning. I never imagined silence could be so loud. As Jordan stood beside me, the ballroom was frozen in stunned disbelief. My father looked like he had just seen a ghost. My mother, for the first time in my life, had nothing to say, no correction. No command, no sarcastic remark. Just silence, tight-lipped and trembling. I handed the mic back to the wedding coordinator, who looked like he wanted to crawl under a table. Then I turned to Jordan. "Are we leaving?" I asked. "Not yet," he said calmly. "Let them stew." The 4 SUVs remained parked just outside the doors. Their tinted windows, reflecting the chaos unraveling inside. The men who exited them, his private security team, I later learned, stood at attention. Arms folded, unmoving. It wasn't just for show. It was to send a message. We weren't the vulnerable ones anymore. We took our seats, at the head table. And the reception tried to limp forward. Guests avoided eye contact. My sister Felicia looked furious. Her perfectly highlighted hair, practically vibrating. A few people came over, pretending they had always liked me. One even joked, "We knew Jordan had something special. You could just tell, please, 2 hours ago." They were whispering about me marrying, beneath my class. Now, suddenly, they wanted investment advice. Jordan leaned over and said, "You don't owe them anything." "I know," I whispered back, "but it's fun to watch them squirm." He chuckled. Later that evening, After the cake had been awkwardly cut in half, the guests had slinked away in shame. I walked out to the garden for some air. Jordan followed, standing next to me beneath the fairy lights strung between the oaks. "You really want to know everything?" he asked, staring out into the dark. "Yeah, no more mystery." He took a breath. "I started working in cybersecurity when I was 17. Freelance stuff. Got recruited by a private defense firm in Europe when I was 22. By 25, I broke away and started my own company. Now we handle contracts for government agencies, billionaires, and corporations with more secrets than the CIA." I blinked, "So the landscaping business?" "Fake, one of many aliases. I've got a garage full of identities. The only real thing about this whole arrangement." He turned to face me. "Was you," I swallowed. "You could have walked away. When my parents dragged you into this, you could have said no." "I could have. But I saw how they treated you. And I knew something they didn't." "What? You're a hell of a lot stronger than they realize." His eyes held mine. And for the first time since this entire circus began, I didn't feel trapped or humiliated. I felt powerful. Wanted, seen. We left that night in one of the SUVs. Jordan's hand on mine the entire ride. We didn't go back to the guest house. Instead, we drove into Manhattan, where he owned an entire penthouse overlooking Central Park. Something he never once mentioned during the 6 months of engagement. "Welcome home," he said, unlocking the door with a retinal scanner. I stepped inside, and it hit me like a wave. This wasn't just a secret billionaire hiding in plain sight. This was a man who had built an empire and never once used it to control me. My parents, who had everything, still used power as a leash. Jordan had it, and used it like a shield. Over the next few months, things shifted quickly. My parents tried to call several times. In fact, I didn't answer. When they finally emailed me, it was laced with backhanded apologies and thinly veiled requests for family meetings. What they really meant was, "We were wrong. But we won't say it, please bring the money." Jordan advised me not to respond. "You don't have to forgive people who only reach out when they think you're useful." I didn't, but I didn't block them either. I wanted them to see everything from afar. I started writing again, properly this time. Jordan had one of his media contacts connect me with a literary agent. And within 6 months, I had a book deal for a memoir called The Arranged. It wasn't a revenge piece. It was a story about expectations, dignity, and the complicated role money plays in love. I wrote honestly, even about the parts where I doubted myself. About the moment I almost believed I was worthless. It hit the bestseller list 3 weeks after release. That's when the calls from my family really ramped up. My mother left voicemails like, "Vanessa, I see your little book is doing well. We should celebrate, maybe a family dinner." "You've made your point," I didn't reply. Instead, I donated a portion of my advance to a women's shelter and did an interview with Forbes about reclaiming identity after family betrayal. Jordan watched from the side. Smiling the whole time, he never asked for credit. Never once took the spotlight. He was just proud. I did go back to visit my childhood home once. It was 6 months after the wedding. And Jordan insisted I didn't need to go. But I wanted closure. I pulled up in one of his sleek blacktown cars, just me this time. No security detail. My mother opened the door. Her eyes were tired. "You look different." "I am different," I said. We sat in the kitchen. The same kitchen where I was once told to marry beneath me, because it's where I belonged. "I read your book," she said eventually. "You embarrassed the family." "No," I replied calmly. "I exposed the truth." "That's different," she frowned. "So this is it, you cut us off." I took a long breath. I didn't cut you off. You did that the moment you saw my independence as rebellion. Then I stood up and walked out, leaving her with her silence. The next chapter of my life wasn't just about being married to a billionaire. It was about healing, redefining success. I began mentoring young writers, especially women with strained family dynamics. I spoke at universities. I traveled. Finally ticking off the bucket list, I wrote at 18. And Jordan, he became more than just the man I married. He became my best friend. My partner in rebuilding a life I actually chose. One night, a year after everything, we were sitting on the rooftop of our penthouse, wine in hand, the city glittering around us. You regret it, I asked, marrying you? He laughed, not for a second. I mean, being dragged into my family's chaos. He leaned over, kissed the top of my head, and said, your chaos was the best thing that ever happened to me. And with that, I finally understood something. My parents tried to define my worth by class, status, and control. But they failed to see the one thing I'd always had that they never did: resilience. And no matter how many black SUVs show up, that can't be bought.